Lovely to be here. That was a little introduction. I had that all written down. My name is Matthew Small, London-based artist. I've been sort of knocking about for a while. I've been known as an urban artist, primarily painting pictures of young people in my area, and which is all good. But I kind of tend to see myself as just an artist, and I kind of always felt like I was on a creative journey. The idea of taglines and like being boxed into things is something that I've always tried to steer away from. I feel like, and this is what this talk is about artistic journeys getting you to places. Painting pictures of young people, blah, blah, blah. Last year, it was my first foray into mosaic work. I didn't really sort of know I was doing mosaic work, but I was literally just taking bits of materials that I've been working on, painting on. Hold on, let me do this. So I was just working on bits of material, and I managed to make a few mosaic pieces, and I displayed those mosaic pieces in an art fair. And so they were sitting there, and I don't know if you guys are aware of Carrie Whitehart. She come along, and so I've got these works there displayed, and I'm not in any way a mosaic artist. And so the lovely thing is that she come along and she saw these works, and she was seemingly impressed. Wow, okay, that's nice. She's like, yeah, you should go and do a talk at the BAM Mosaic. Really? But what was lovely about that was that what I'd done was something that she took note of because it was different. It was from a different angle. So for me, being known as a painter, and something that I don't want to be associated with as that's all I do, my little movement to the side, trying something different, had been appreciated by someone who is known as a mosaicist and has got a great knowledge of it. And I took great confidence because every time you step into something new, you are stepping into the unknown. And the unknown is scary, and the unknown doesn't always make you feel like you have done the right thing. And that's something that I've always sort of wanted to challenge is myself and my preconceptions of things. Within my artistic journey, I want to be uncomfortable, and I want to not feel sure, and I want to take risks. So that's how I've ended up here, which is great, and it's lovely to be here with you guys. It all started for me as this journey when I was that little kid and I was working out, just being a child and enjoying stuff. And that would be me being an artist or just being creative and playing about. And always wanted to sort of keep that childlike mindset of just picking up some paint and splashing about. I don't want to lose that. And I think when you get it sort of ironed out of you in college, during the school, so from like GCSEs and that's that sort of shame of losing that sense of play. It's something that you kind of hope that you can find one day, and it come back to me when I was doing my foundation course, and the first thing that the tutor said to me is, "Hey, whatever you think about art, whatever your preconceptions are, throw that all away. Don't bring what you believe art to be into this. Just go in with an open mind." And that's kind of what I felt liberated by that. I think just knowing that art didn't need to be what I believed it was actually really important. It was, that was me doing the Picasso sort of mindset of trying to get back to what I know or what is being an artist. So 18, I'm starting to see things different. And that was the beginning of my journey, because art shouldn't be functionable. It shouldn't have a set of rules. And creativity shouldn't be bound by what is known to be the way of doing things. So that's kind of like basically me saying that there's no full stops. Creativity shouldn't have full stops. The belief that where you go in your art journey, having to be bound by what's already been there, is something that I'm always going to battle against. And so when you think about the Mesopotamian mosaicists way back 3,000 years BC, they didn't come into picking up those bits of stones and placing them on the wall and say, all right, well, this is what this is about. They were playing, they were discovering. And for me, that discovery is what it's about, not ever believing that the conversation ends. So for me now, if Mosaic is to be seen as like it's just about putting tiles on walls, then I that's not something that I play to. And so that's the thing about being rubbish at something and making mistakes and not quite being sure allows you to come to something in a different way. Yeah, so not following the rules. That's how I've got to making this new sort of languages. And the new languages being that what I do now in my practice is I go out and I find materials and I bring those materials into the streets. That's always been one of my sort of what set me apart. Being known as an urban artist means that I've got this, and also I've been known as an illustrator. So I think that was one of the things, is that there was no formal training. There was no one telling me what art was meant to be. So for me to pursue this sort of artistic journey, I wasn't able to even contemplate how it should be. So I've become known as this urban artist who works on found materials. So all my paintings have been sort of there splashing about on these bits of metal and forming all these rather interesting pieces of art out of what I find in the streets. And that was a really interesting way of interpreting my subjects, because I'll be painting these young people and I'll be doing my best to display them and give them some light. And for me, going and getting the materials that I found on the streets, bits of metal, things that had been discarded, things that were deemed obsolete, that were no longer of any importance to others, that was actually really interesting to get these materials, get these things that had got this story to it. All these materials that they already had a life. So I'd be picking up bits of like oven doors, and I'd be picking up fridge doors and car bonnets and all sorts of crazy stuff and bring it back to my studio. And then I'd be placing all these pictures of these young urban individuals on, and then using the slightly different style of paint technique, which is about just throwing paint onto the canvas, mixing it all up with with oil-based paints and varnish, and I'd be throwing all sorts of crazy stuff on there. And it was all about me having and developing that extra way of looking at things, that different way of looking at things. I think I've become known for having an individual voice. And that for me was always the most important thing, that in my journey, my voice, my creative voice was as distinct as it could be, and no one else would be able to look at what I do and think that it's like anyone else. So what happened is that all these materials that I've been storing in my studio, I've got tons and tons of metal. So much metal, it's disgusting. So I'm painting on these bits of canvas. Well, they're canvases for me, they're discarded scrap, but I'm painting on them, and they are beautiful objects to paint on. As I say, they've got a story behind them, they've got a resonance. But I realised that I've got this stuff here, and the materials, they have got they're almost like bits of, they're like palettes, they're like Pantons. They've got all these different colours, and they've got all these different hues and patinas. You've got the rust, you've got the oven doors, which are metal, and you've got, so I'm like, oh wow, I can utilise these as a new sort of language, a new way of producing my art. So that allows me to start moving forward with this creative journey. I'm not just a painter, as I said. I don't want to be seen as just a painter. I'm an artist. And so I've been allowed in my head, because I've not got these restrictions, to push it forward. And so I'll start utilizing these bits of material to create my faces. And it started off with sculptural pieces. So in this journey again, I'm not a sculptor, I'm just someone who makes images of portraits of people, and I'm going into a new unexplored world of sculpture. And so what I'm doing is I'm taking these bits of metal and I'm starting to map, all the portraits are mapped out, and I'm taking different tones, different colors, and I'm using those bits of metal, and then and I'm placing it upon the actual sculpture and building it up from these different metals. And that's where I go, oh, I've got a new visual language. And that's the exciting thing. I've moved into a new way of seeing. I've got a new visual way of portraying the subject matter, which is like, you know, if I was always just seeing my journey as just being a painter, there wouldn't be this phase here where I'm sort of taking that unknown leap and starting to go into sculpture and applying the metal that I find. From the sculptures, I realized that it's a little bit tedious to get the material, like get the metal, and what I was doing with the portrait, with the sculptures, was cutting out the whole piece of metal and applying it to each tonal area. So if I go back, so each segment of the face, I was having to cut out like one piece of metal to fit that, and it was actually a lot harder, a lot less of a simple task to do. So the evolution of this process, working with the metal, is that I started to cut bits of the tones up. So like the white metal, I'd start cutting little bits to fill the spaces. So all of a sudden, I've got what would resemble a mosaic technique. And this is nothing that I've actually planned on. It's just my little journey of playing around with materials and just seeing how I can keep conveying the subject matter. The young people, I want to display, I want to show you. Oh wow, now all of a sudden I've got what resembles a mosaic piece. And I think that was always me wanting to be liberated, me wanting to not feel constrained. Coming to this point here where I was suddenly going, oh, okay, so this is interesting. And people starting to notice that next phase. That gave me a whole load of new ideas, and I think that's the joy of it. I'm not a mosaicist, but this journey that I've taken, the wonder being that I've got to this place now where the portraits I'm making are completely and utterly, it's me out in the sea, and I've now found that language, and I now know that there's a confidence that I can exhibit through it, because I know that no one else is doing what I'm doing. And so that allows me to become even more capable of refining and taking it to the next levels, which means that I've actually started applying rules. So whereas I once upon a time was going against the rules, now I've actually established rules. And I think that's the interesting thing about going on about Mosaic, and how there once upon a time was those early guys picking up the bits of stone and bashing it on the wall, and there was no rules. They were just exploring. They just realized that these stones could be put on the wall and they could make an image. And as mosaic has gone on, it's become refined and there's become a set of rules. And the way I look at it is that there should be no full stops, but we can't help but put full stops on things. So mosaic, the practice of it, does it have a full stop? I don't believe it should. I don't think that sculpture should have a full stop. I don't think any art practice should have that full stop, but we all place full stops on things. So even now, I have to challenge myself about that presumption that this is how I work and this is what I do, which is all good, but you want to make sure that your journey doesn't have a defined way of doing things. So fast forward from me first going into the practice of getting bits of metal and having the fun time just learning a new way of doing things. I was asked last year to do a mural out in America. And so this is almost like a sort of the way that my career's evolved, is that being known as a painter, what my natural instinct would be is like, oh, I'm going to do a mural. I've never done any street work at all. I'm going to do a mural out in America. How should I play this? Should I do what I'm used to doing, what I'm known for doing, and go and have and paint out there? Or do I jump into the deep end and try something that's completely out of my comfort zone? And so I said, right, I'm not going to go out and paint. I'm going to actually go out there and do a large 12 by 8 foot mural made entirely out of scrap material, which, on the face of it was bonkers, because like, how on earth am I meant to undertake that? I had 7 days to do it. Yeah, I said the same thing. But as ever, you don't stop yourself from exploring. You don't stop yourself from taking the risks. You don't stop yourself from worrying about if you're going to bugger it all up. You just have to go in there and if it goes right, you've learnt something new. And that's the whole way that I'm doing, is that I'm constantly going, oh, I've learnt something new. Oh, there's a new way of seeing. And so that new way of seeing has led me to being brave enough to go out and attempt something like that. 7 days, locating all the materials, picking up various bits, chopping them all to pieces, and then working out how each tone would work. So this is a picture of Jesse Owens, who's the track runner, and it's out in where he used to run. And so there was a little bit of pressure to sort of do him justice in 7 days. And so the joy being is that I managed to actually pull it all off. And new ways of seeing, I've now got another mural project on the go now, which is now in London. And that one is about to commence next month. And that'll be doing a picture of a young gentleman from Acton. So I've got this whole new way of seeing. I've got a whole new way of showing my work and thinking about how my practice can show and shine lights on people that I feel need to be seen. And I think that's, for me, is a real beautiful indicator of the fact that I have tried my best to not have presumptions and to come at things from different angles, and for people to be receptive because I'm not doing it the way it should be done. So I think that's the nice thing, that now I'm here, like from a year ago, me putting up those mosaic pieces in the art fair, Carrie looking at them, being told to come and do a talk, like, oh my God, what do I know about mosaicing? And now feeling confident enough to actually take that practice out there and to see how I can move to the next level. And I think that's the most important thing, is that everything should be a jumping point. So if there's a foundation of rules and a set of rules that are there for anything, you use that as a way of being inspired to move it forward to the next set of principles and next way of seeing things. So yeah, there should never be the full stop. And I think that's the way I see all of this, is no full stops. I think that's it.